Give me thumbs up. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If we could please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Peggy Bosley.
Here. Sorry.
Paul Godwin.
Here.
Chris Easter.
Here.
Karen Pelham.
Here.
Dan Downey.
Here.
This meeting is a meeting of the Deer Park Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. Due to the COVID-19 national pandemic, community input is being suspended for this meeting. Due to the COVID-19 national pandemic, community input is being suspended for this meeting. We got it. Okay. However, public comments will be accepted via this link here.
I have a motion to approve the meeting agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? All those in favor of approving tonight's meeting agenda, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. District recognitions and donations.
Sorry about that, Ms. Huster. I don't
That's
know.
all right. We just wanted
There
to
were
make sure
5
everybody
separate
got it.
eyes on this board agenda, and I don't know how we missed that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't have any donations per se to approve this evening, but we do have several recommendations that I want to talk about. The first recommendation or recognition is Lighthouse Community Church. The board would like to recognize and thank Lighthouse Community Church for their donation of 110 backpacks with supplies for families in need to start the 2020-2021 school year. So we want to thank them publicly. And I know Jake had sent out a Google form at the end of last year asking families to respond who would need some assistance going into this year. And Lighthouse Community Church said we will take care of all those. So thank you to them. The Board of Education would also like to thank Blue Ash Community Church for their donation of lunch to our administrative team this summer, as well as their offer to purchase lunch for all of our teachers this Thursday, August 20th. Blue Ash Community Church has also reached out to the schools to offer backpacks with supplies for any remaining students who weren't able to take advantage of the gracious offer from Lighthouse Community Church. So a big thank you to Andy Rainey and Blue Ash Community Church. The Board of Ed would also like to recognize and thank our many Deer Park teachers, parents, students, and community members who dedicated their time this summer to help us develop our back-to-school reopening plans. We've been talking a lot about reopening plans the last few board meetings, and we've been spending a lot of time on these plans really since March hit, thinking about it and then developing those plans June and July. We had a lot of parents that volunteered on different committees, a lot of our teachers who took time out of their summer vacations to participate, and obviously our administrative team worked really hard on the plans as well. So just wanted to thank all those folks who worked so hard to help us get going this school year. The Board of Education would also like to recognize and thank the following volunteers for their great work this summer serving the Books and Bites program. Those volunteers were Patty Haddon, Lori McGahan, Carrie Gunikins, Michelle Lemon, Beth Earhart, and also several volunteers from Kenwood Baptist Church. So it's a great program. Patty, I don't know if you want to say anything about it. If you do, you would have to go to that mic back there. But just to tell you a little bit about Books and Bites and that for the community who may not know what that is.
Sure. Last year we did Books and Bites. This year we did Books and Bites Plus because we added a math component to the program. So last year it was 3 Sunday afternoons where we offered them a meal, and then the parents came in. We gave them, Kenwood Baptist really coordinates it. They gave them a bag of books each time to take home and keep. This year we added Michelle Lemon and math, so there were online math activities for them to access anytime they wanted. The bag included books and then math activities, like a deck of cards, things to do with it. There's also a family read, so the family could read together, and then there's like a treasure hunt to answer questions. The first time they got a ready-to-make meal, and the second time they got a Donato's pizza for the family to have for dinner. It was for rising second graders, and we had really good turnout. And Kenwood Baptist is super generous and donated everything and all the coordination. And then Beth and Michelle really took the lead and did great activities for those families. So great program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is a great program, and Patty does a lot of work behind the scenes as well. She would never take credit for it, but our teachers also spent a tremendous amount of time helping to facilitate that program. So thank you to everybody that was involved. The Board of Education would also like to recognize our maintenance and custodial staff for their hard work this summer, installing hand sanitizer stations, installing plexiglass in common areas, social distancing markers, and everything else COVID-related to get our school buildings ready for students and staff. So Dave, well, there you are back there. Thank you to you and your guys for all of your hard work. And I know the last few weeks have been really challenging. There's always something else popping up every single day beyond the COVID issues that we're trying to get ready for. Just typical building and school issues, things pop up every day. So thank you to those guys for their hard work. And lastly, the Board of Education would like to recognize Debbie Field for her 29 years of service to Deer Park Schools. Debbie has decided to retire. She was an asset to our district and had a great love for our students and our teachers. Debbie's presence in our school buildings will be dearly missed, and we wish Debbie all the best in her retirement. So just wanted to recognize Debbie in her 29 years. She had sent us an email and said her best 20 years, she loved being in the media center, reading to the kids. And so she was will always be a great part of Deer Park Schools, and just want to thank Debbie for her service. That is the end of my recognitions this evening.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the July 13th special board meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All those in favor of approving July 13th, 2020 special board meeting minutes, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. May I please have a motion for the July 21st regular board meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? All those in favor of approving the July 21st, 2020 regular board meeting minutes, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. On to our treasurer financial report.
All right, I have the July 2020. Okay, I can project pretty well, so hopefully you guys can hear me. I have the July 2020 board report. There's a couple things that I wanted to just mention on here. This is July. It's the first month of the new fiscal year, which we are now in fiscal year 2021. The 2600s, that is the business support services. There was a bit of an increase there, and that was because we have a new website, which I'm sure everybody has seen, the new website and how it looks. Jake's worked really hard on that one, but that's something we didn't have the same time last year, so that's why there's an increase there. We also got a battery backup system for the high school for the network, so if we ever have a power outage, the network will still be up and running, which is very important.
Outstanding.
You'll see down here on the 500s, materials, supplies, and textbooks. That included items for the start of the required PPE in order to start the school year. You're going to see that increase, the same line item next month when we do the August report, because that's going to show most of the other things that we needed to get in preparation. So this is just kind of the start. It's first month of the new fiscal year, and we're looking forward to getting through.
On to 2021.
That's right.
Can I have a motion for approval?
So moved. Second.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor of approving the treasurer financial report for July 2020, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Recommendations.
Alrighty, my first recommendation tonight is an authorization to invest. This is the normal redemption that we do for payroll, outstanding checks, and our accounts payable.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? All those in favor to approve the authorization to invest Star Ohio redemption, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, my next recommendation tonight is the recommendation to approve this inter-fund transfer. So throughout the year, we collect fees from our students paying their accounts towards band, chorus, dance, Parkers, and athletics. So what we do is we bring that all into the general fund, and then after the fiscal year closes and we tally everything up, we move them and delineate them to the proper accounts. So they will go towards band, chorus, dance, Parkers, and athletics. So this is one thing we do annually every year.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? All those in favor of approving the interfund transfers, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
My last recommendation tonight is a recommendation to establish accounts. This comes straight down from the Ohio Auditor of State. This is to approve a new fund to track the CARES Act Relief Fund revenues and expenditures. So this is a 510 fund. It's different from the CARES Act funding that we got last fiscal year. So two different funding, two different similar sources, but two different ways of tracking and reporting on expenditures and revenues.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? About how much money is that?
The CARES Act Relief Fund for FY21 is around $53,000.
Thank you.
So not as much as we got CARES Act last year, but it's still something to help offset the reductions.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor of approving the fund for the CARES Act Relief Fund for revenue and expenditures, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Reports of the superintendent. Wonder what we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, I have one report, and it's pretty familiar. Okay, so been thinking about where to start. We obviously have a lot of items to talk about and discuss this evening. We've made a lot of progress, I think, just since we were here last Monday with our special meeting. But I think first I just want to address some of the just more recent concerns that have come out that I know parents, I've received text messages and emails from parents, and I know probably some of my administrative team has as well. Our secretaries are receiving phone calls about some of these issues. So I just want to talk to a few of these pieces and hopefully just make sure the community is aware and kind of calm some nerves, I think. First of all, Schoology. Schoology, I think most people didn't have a difficult time logging in when they got their usernames and passwords in the mail. But one of the things that they found when they looked, I think today, they were looking at their kids' class lists and class schedules. There were a couple issues. One, Mr. Moulton had moved from 5th grade to 6th grade. And so in our system, and I should say that we also had a second grade teacher who moved, a 1st grade teacher who moved from 1st to 2nd grade. That was also part of this. But when we moved them, our new EMIS coordinator, Alta, she's brand new to us, and one of the things she didn't know was that those teachers had moved. So she didn't update them in the system. So there were a couple, I shouldn't say a couple, I guess students who had Mr. Moulton may have been, in 5th grade, saw his name again. Same thing in 2nd grade. So that caused a little issue and some questions. The systems integrate every night, and so I know Alta was working on upgrading all those systems today. It's not Schoology. I just want to make sure parents and kids are clear. It is not Schoology. It was Dazzle. It was our back-end system. Those will update, again, they update every night, and so hopefully most of those errors will be fixed tomorrow, and when our parents get in and look at their schedules, or our students, they'll be up to date. Am I missing anything on that, Dr. Orso? Does that sound right? So there is that. Homeroom teachers, that was also, I think, one of the concerns. They didn't know who at the elementary level, they didn't know who their homeroom teacher was, so they saw a list of teachers. That is also, Alta was working on that today. That is also going to be worked on, and hopefully, do you know if she got to that today, Dr. Orso? She skipped lunch today because she had so much going on. So if it's not, again, it updates every single night. So if it's not tomorrow, it'll be the next day. But she's working really hard to get all that fixed, and hopefully that'll be taken care of, so it'll be cleared up for our parents. And again, if you have questions, if parents have questions, they can call and we can help out with those things and let them know, who their homeroom teacher is and if Schoology is not displaying correctly.
Will it say clearly homeroom teacher?
Yes, there will be one homeroom teacher listed very clearly for them to know who they are once that system updates, once Schoology talks to Dazzle this evening or tomorrow whenever Alta has a chance to get that done. One thing I put on my notes that I want to touch on, there's been a lot of question with social distancing. And obviously we went to a hybrid model so that we could increase social distancing in the classroom. That was a major concern, of our teachers and a lot of community members as well, a lot of parents. One of the things I just wanted to touch on this evening as we talk about that, let me find my want to find my class list here. I just want to give everybody an idea. These aren't exact. I took an average, but of numbers that we're looking at, especially at the elementary grades and the high school grades, except for junior, senior high, except for one grade level is less than the elementary. But here's what we're looking at on average. The class of 2033, which is kindergarten class, averaging 7.75 kids in a classroom right now.
Round that up to 8, right?
We can round that up to 8.
So we have a whole kid there.
I like to be exact.
I know.
We can
I
round,
know what
we can
part
round
of
it up to
it's
8.
staying home.
But what, and that is with taking out the kids who are going remote and who are working on accelerated education. So we pulled those kids out, and then again, going AM and PM in kindergarten, you only have half your kids. So averaging 8 kids of class. In first grade, we're averaging 8.8 or 9 kids a class, if you want to round up. In second grade, we're averaging about 7 kids per class. Now, again, I'm giving averages, so if a student shows up and there's 11 kids in the class, I don't want a parent to say, well, you said only 7. This is an average.
And second grade has 5 teachers, so that's probably.
That's true. Third grade, 9 kids per class. In fourth grade, 9.5 kids per class. Fifth grade, 9 kids per class. And sixth grade, 7.3 or 7 kids per class. So as you can see, we have very small class sizes at this, which is our goal. Our goal is to be able to keep kids spread. One of the other, if I can find this other document. Here it is. One of the other things I wanted to talk about, Mr. Conover had measured previously square footage, and I think, what is the small square footage class you saw at Amity, Dave? 644? 644 square feet. And so with social distancing, rooms of 650 square feet to be able to separate kids 6 feet apart, you fit 18 kids. Okay, so we're way below that, well below that. Kindergarten classrooms are even bigger. I think 980 square feet. And again, I didn't even measure up that, but that's in the mid-20s. If you want to safely social distance with all kids, it's probably 23 or 24 kids. But I have a list here, and we meet all of those at every grade level, all those minimum spacing requirements. So I just wanted to make you guys aware of that as well.
Just quickly,
Yes.
second grade has 5 teachers. Is there another one?
Yes,
that has 5?
Macaulay Longwell moved up from first grade to second grade this year, and she will be the 5th second grade teacher. And again, we did that based on class numbers that dictated that move. And then Kevin Moulton moved from 5th grade to 6th grade, and those are the only 2 grade levels that have 5 teachers.
So does that mean some of the kids will have 3 teachers, like the ones that have 5 teachers?
Yes, it could potentially. Is that correct, Josh?
In 6th grade?
In 6th grade.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Okay, on my list that I'm checking off here, I also wanted to talk, in regards to social distancing. I had emailed the board a link to a webinar with Children's Hospital last week that had a lot of great information. And, I've heard time and time again about social distancing. In our original plan, we said our minimum distance that we were using for our plan was 3 feet. And so I had a lot of questions. Why 3 feet? And I think that question has come up time and time again in the community, so I wanted to address that. And if you guys watched, I think all of you were able to see the Children's Hospital webinar, but the doctors basically said 3 feet is good, 4 feet is better, 5 feet is better, 6 feet is even better. The guidelines from the CDC refer to a minimum of 3 feet as well. Again, 6 feet is ideal, or 2 meters. So I just wanted to touch on that, from a distancing standpoint. We shouldn't, based on the numbers I just told you in the square footage of our classrooms, we're not going to have those issues. But I just wanted people to know that when you talk about distancing, 3 feet, and again, that's not my words, that's one of the doctors at Children's Hospital, 3 feet is good. 6 feet is much better.
Assuming you're wearing a mask. Correct?
A mask is always,
Correct.
yes, a mask is always
The
helpful. That's,
importance of that.
mask
in
was, I think
addition.
mask was number 1 important, and distancing was number 2 important. Okay. the other thing on my checklist before I get to some of the questions I know that the board asked last week that I want to address tonight, I just want to touch on the governor's address today. The governor had addressed the public at 2 o'clock, and then he actually met with superintendents at 4 o'clock, and I think athletic directors at 5 o'clock, but just highlighted that sports, extracurriculars, after-school sports are going to be a go. That he gave the green light on sports for this fall sports season. Obviously, things could change in the middle of fall sports, could change for winter or spring, but as of right now, we have the green light. They are going to send out guidance on his order to open up sports. One of the big questions was testing. Previously, there was a requirement that all athletes had to test 72 hours before the event and have the test results in hand, essentially saying that high school sports wouldn't happen. Today, he said that test was never meant for high school athletes. Okay, so he is going to be taking away those testing requirements. However, he is going to send out an order, and something that's going to be contained in the order talks about spectators. That is, I know it's a big discussion in our community. You know, how many people are going to be able to attend, who's going to be able to get tickets. You know, typically, most stadiums, and if you look online, you'll see stadium calculators, and they're going to give us a guidance on capacity. It's been on average about 20% capacity is what they'll allow into the stadiums, which for us, I think on the, matter of fact, let me look at my text message real quick. I have the capacity guidelines here. I don't want to give you bad numbers. So at 20% capacity, we can fit 210 people on the home side, which 19 of which would be in the end zone, and 96 people on the away side. So when you add 210 and 96, you know, you're looking at 306. That's not a lot of people. You know, and that includes away guests, that includes coaches, that includes players, that includes cheerleaders, that includes band and color guard. You have to consider all those people. The governor is going to give us guidance on that. And, you know, I know there's a lot of questions. We're getting emails and phone calls about, you know, how many are going to be able to attend, how many tickets can I have for my kid's game. We don't know that yet. We're going to follow the guidance of the governor. And obviously, capacity is very limited. So, you know, we're going to do our best to be able to let as many parents see their kids perform as possible, but I can't guarantee anybody anything at this point until I see the order from the governor and what that language says. And once we get that order and the language, I'll talk with Greg and we'll make a decision on how we're going to divvy out those tickets for the families, but we just don't know yet. So I just, you know, I think one of my old principals used to say, everybody just calm down. Everybody just calm down.
Say the 306 includes the athletes and cheerleaders?
Yes. The athletes aren't in the numbers, but the 306 is spectators that we can fit in our bleachers, in our stands. We have to be very, very precise on it. And as a matter of fact, I think Lieutenant Governor Houston in the call today said there would be people monitoring that to make sure regulations were, and they wanted each facility to have a facility supervisor per se that would oversee just COVID-related requirements. So we may have to get creative with how this is done. Again, with everything we've done, I think, so far with the schools, you have to get somewhat creative to make it work. You know, at the end of the day, we do our best to accommodate, but, you know, there may be some people that aren't happy. I don't know. You know, I think that's part of this. I said from the very beginning, we all have to be flexible, and I think that just continues with this order. So just want to make you aware, that was the conversation today. That was what the governor has stated. He will get that order out. I will make, you know, I'll make it known that when he said that he was going to put the face mask, the facial covering order out, I think it was 8 days before that order came out, before we saw it. So I'm not sure, and I'm not placing any bets on when he will have that order out with the language. So, you know, we might only be a week or two, a week and a half, 10 days before the season starts before we even know. But when we know, we'll make a plan and our community will know.
Yeah, because we don't have a game this week. Some schools do, so I think they're kind of panicking, but we don't have a game till the following week,
Our
right?
first home football game is September the 4th. I believe Friday, September 4th, so we have some time. And, you know, one of the other comments he made is that while the capacity may be 20% at the stadiums. Again, he didn't give us that exact guidance. The capacity will be lower for indoor areas. You know, being outdoor, they're a little bit more lenient. So just a heads up there. Okay, and then the last thing, I know we mentioned this last meeting, I just heard Jake say this evening, but I know some parents, some families have tried to access our app, which the app was no longer working because we switched website providers. It has been approved by the App Store today, but Jake said their timeline that they gave him could be 1 hour to 7 days before it's active. That's quite a wide range of time. But it's there, it's in the store, and when it's active, we'll send an email out, we'll send a release out, just letting everybody know that our app is active and ready to go, synced up with our new website. Okay, so those are the pieces I really wanted to touch on that I made a note of. Now I'm going to answer a lot of the questions that were asked last week that we've had obviously a lot more time to dig in, especially with teachers being here last 2 days of last week and then this week so far. And so I'm just going to go down and touch on some of the questions and maybe some of the statements that were made last week. I'm used to licking my fingers. It's hard to do that with a mask
No, I
on.
did that too.
Okay. So one of the questions was about Wednesdays and what remote Wednesdays will look like for us. And again, you know, it's not, our remote Wednesdays will not look like remote last year. Our expectations for teachers and students are that they're going to be working. Our teachers are going to have office hours as well as meeting times with students where they're going to get on to Google Hangouts or whatever software that they're using to meet with students. I did hear with parents, because we put that out already through email, and some parents that said, well, you know, they're going to be at grandma's house and they're not going to have access. I would recommend those parents talk to those teachers. You know, obviously we want to be flexible, and we are understanding. So we're going to try to work with you. So I'd recommend you contact your teachers if you have those issues. I know it's a difficult time for our parents, and I feel for our parents who have had to, in the last couple weeks, rearrange everything they've done from work schedules to childcare. We are cognizant and understand that this has put some of our families in a big bind, but we appreciate it. And by and large, they've all been so supportive and very flexible. So I want to thank our families for that, because it's difficult right now. It's difficult. While it's difficult for us to try to launch school, it's even more difficult, I think, at times for them to be able to prepare and plan. I mean, it impacts work, it impacts family, it impacts everything. So, you know, bottom line is we are going to expect engagement between teachers and students on those Wednesdays. And if it's a difficulty for a family, please let us know. The question was asked about shield installation. Again, we're not having plexiglass shields actually installed on our desk. We have desk dividers, which have clear, almost soft like plexiglass in them. I know you had asked the question last week, when are those going to be in? I got with the direct sales guy on that, who works directly with the manufacturer. I wanted them in before this board meeting. He said they'll be in by Thursday. He said, and he's promised us that we'll have those before school starts. So that is a good thing. I know one of the conversations, you know, when we're talking about desk dividers last week, and it's something maybe we talk about as a board, but I think maybe you have a little more information now to make you know, some decisions. But it was mentioned that we wanted desk dividers from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. And knowing that our class sizes, that I just, you know, again, we talked about desk dividers early on when we were bringing all of our kids back and we weren't going to be able to social distance. That's another way to protect our kids. That's another layer. We have since obviously pivoted and we're going hybrid. And so, you know, while the desk divider is another layer, you're going to have classrooms with 6, 7, 8, 9 kids in them. You know, I wanted to put it up for discussion, just because if the desk dividers as a board, if you say we want them K to 12, we'll make that happen. They wouldn't all be here by the first day of school, but we get them ASAP. You know, I'm just curious about your thoughts on that. Hearing the numbers, hearing the square footage that we have, if you think that should be a requirement that every student has one for every desk. I will tell you this, I did a little research of my own as well, and you know, schools are all over the board with it. Some are not having desk dividers, period. Some are having them for elementary tables only, like we initially had talked about, tables only. Some are having little dividers that kids independently bring with them, K to 12, and then they can set it up on their desk whenever they want. We've also had the discussion of if a kid has a mask and they want a divider, they could also have a face shield over top of their mask. You know, the CDC and the Hamilton County Public Health Department would say, that's the most protection. You have a mask and a face shield, which we could do that as well. Just going to put it out there for your thoughts.
Microphone.
The latest that we've gotten from the health department is that we're not to use face shields.
Face shields in combination with masks?
No, they're not supposed to use face shields, is basically what they're saying.
Well, the CDC, what the health department has said is that you shouldn't use face shields as a replacement for a mask. Face shields in combination with your mask they will recommend that every time. That's best practice. But as far as face shields as a replacement for your mask, what they're saying is, and in my mess of papers here, I'm sure I have it somewhere. Oh, I do.
That's more impressive than anything I've seen. Being able to pick these papers.
I got a lot going on up here. So I'm glad you say that because I do want to talk, you know, face shields have been a topic of discussion, have been questions from parents. The order that came out on Friday and then was backed up by the Ohio Department of Health on Saturday, they sent out extra guidance. Basically, it's just stating that face shields should not be used as replacements for masks. However, there are exemptions. The requirement to wear a face covering does not apply when, and I should say, I'm going to preface it with this. Each of these exemptions, they say if you meet one of these exemptions for a face mask exemption, you should use a face shield in its place at that time. The requirement to wear a facial covering does not apply when the individual has a medical condition, including respiratory conditions that restricts breathing, mental health conditions, or a disability that contraindicates the wearing of a facial covering, or the individual is communicating or seeking to communicate with someone who is hearing impaired or has another disability where an accommodation is appropriate or necessary. The individual is actively participating in outdoor recess or physical activity where students are able to maintain a distance of 6 feet or more. So that would be a physical activity in phys ed class where they could distance 6 feet or more. Or athletic practice, scrimmage, or competition that is permitted under a separate Department of Health order. The individual is seated and actively consuming food or beverage, where students and staff can maintain a distance of at least 6 feet, and removal of the facial covering is necessary for instructional purposes, including instruction in foreign language, English language for non-native speakers, and other subjects where wearing a facial covering would prohibit participation in normal classroom activities, such as playing an instrument. Students are able to maintain a distance of 6 feet or more, and a mask break is deemed necessary by the educator supervising the educational setting. I think that was very important, you know, especially with having our kids, not just younger kids, older kids alike, and teachers, being in here for a full day. That's important. It provides our teachers some autonomy to be able to provide a mask break. The individual is alone in an enclosed space, such as an office, or, the last exemption, when an established, sincerely held religious requirement exists that does not permit a facial covering. So those are the exemptions that have been listed in the order. It's definitely more strict than what was originally released in the back-to-school guidance that the governor released in July, I believe. But there still is some opportunity for mask breaks and things like that.
So I'm going to ask a question.
Mhm.
So, for example, I can see with the ESL and foreign language, do they just then take the mask off? That was my mask, right? Or do they then put a shield on to?
Yeah, what the
do their job?
recommendation from the health department was is if you meet one of those exemptions, if you can't wear a mask, they would recommend a shield.
Okay, so,
Because that is better than nothing, although they're saying there is inconclusive evidence to say that a shield would protect as much as a face mask.
okay, so do all teachers have face shields?
We do have shields.
Okay, thank you.
I'm actively drinking.
On the plexiglass protectors, what do you have allocated already?
Dave, what is the number we have allocated towards the desk dividers and all the other plexiglass?
Is the specific grades?
Are you talking about like number?
The
Are you talking about
The
numbers,
desk
or are you
dividers.
talking about the cost?
Yeah, well, cost is always part of it, how many and what grades we apply to?
For the student desk dividers, we ordered 550. And that covered all the tables which we originally talked about doing at the elementary and at the high school.
And all the desks at the elementary that we would have a need for with our students.
Yes, and that number also allocated about 100 additional desk dividers that we could allocate if we needed to.
Junior, senior high school?
Wherever.
Yes.
So wait, you confused me a second. So 550, that's covering all the tables at Amity and the high school.
Yes.
In addition
And all the
to,
desks at Amity. All the desks at Amity as well.
okay, so
um,
every desk would have.
Correct.
Okay,
When we have students, obviously, where
Right.
the students are sitting.
correct.
And then you have enough, again, an additional 100 on top of that to be able to disperse. Yeah, so essentially, if
as
you
needed.
order, how many did you say you ordered, Dave?
550 was the number.
550. You would have 450 that if we were using them for all the tables and every student in the elementary that is in session, you would have still an additional 100 that we could
Okay.
deploy other places.
And the teacher desk was 128 of the 30 by 3 foot plexiglass on stands. There's 128 of those coming.
And teachers that don't have desks, then they don't have to worry about getting one, right?
Every teacher has one.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Any other questions about desk dividers or any other conversation about desk dividers? Okay, I'm going to go down this list. One of the questions we asked last week that was asked of us was about champions and what does that look like? And so we've had several conversations with Amber, who's our champions coordinator here in Deer Park, and they're going to do whatever we ask. So essentially she said, Jay, if you want them divided up in classes, we'll get that done for you. So we would have smaller pods both before and after school champions, and they would have it by classes. They might have one person that oversees 4 different groups or 6 different groups, but those groups will be broken down and separated to the best of their abilities. She said she'd be able to do that for us.
Do you know how many kids have signed up for it yet or anything?
I don't have those numbers yet, so I'm sure there's.
They'll take temperatures then when they come in?
Yes, so Champions is also required because most of our kids that aren't in Champions, we're taking their temperatures. Champions will take those kids' temperatures as they come in and follow the same regulations
Right.
that we have.
So that should cut down some of the people coming into the building in the morning.
A few, yeah. And just to touch on that too, to add on to that, we did a simulation this morning where we had our staff report to Amity Elementary between 7:50 and 8 a.m. this morning. And we just simulated it at the front door. Josh, Mr. Druid, and Mrs. Ellis were at the front door, and we had 2 doors open like we intend to do. Now, we'll have, I think, 4 different entrances at Amity, which will be communicated to our families this week. But we had 100 teachers, which is essentially about a third of what we're going to have about 300 to 350 students coming into Amity at one time. Maybe actually probably a little less than that with our current numbers. But we were able to get 100 teachers in. Now, granted, they are teachers. They're not little kids hauling backpacks and lunch boxes. But we were able to get 100 teachers through those doors in 4 minutes and 30 seconds this morning. The thermometers worked great. We did a little dry run yesterday with a few students. Some of our teachers brought their kids to help us. And one thing, we realize that we'll have to talk about because I want to say it in front of our public so that they know, 2 of the kids had rode their bikes to school and they were hot from riding their bikes. And they had, I think it was 100, a little over 100, 101 temperature. And so we know that, it could be because they rode their bikes to school. There's 2 of them, both riding bikes. Sat them aside, let them cool down, retook their temperature, and it was 99.1 or something. So it dropped tremendously just in those few minutes. So that could be something we need to be careful about, because our community is a walking and bike riding community. So we have a plan to set our kids aside. We have some benches. We'll set them on, let them cool down, retake their temperature. We also have oral thermometers in the nurse's office that we could get a more accurate reading than your surface forehead scan. But with our dry run this morning, it went very well. The thermometers worked great. They're very quick, very efficient. Our teachers walked in, as if they were a student, pumped their hand with hand sanitizer and went on. The high school teachers walked out the back. The elementary teachers just went to their classroom, and it went well. So that was encouraging. Specials teachers, how are we using specials teachers? And the question really was last week about art, band, phys ed. And I guess to talk about band and chorus first. I talked to, matter of fact, we've had several conversations, but I emailed our specials teachers in band and choir last week, and we had some good conversation just about class is going to look different. If they're inside, there's really not going to be much performance as far as what people are used to. There can be some percussion, there can be some keyboard. They've talked about buying keyboards to introduce some different music theory, but those can be wiped down. We're not spreading those respiratory droplets. If band is playing or if choir is singing, that would be done outside where they can be spread at least 10 feet apart on nice days. We know when we get into the winter time and on rainy days that can't happen. So inside, there's not going to be performing. Sixth grade, the conversation that we're having tomorrow and the proposal from me over the weekend, again, I know we want to perform, and I know sixth grade band, we've had it for a long time. All kids have taken sixth grade band, and it probably, I'm not saying probably, it is one of the reasons we're so successful every year in band is we start with a great foundation. But this is unique times, and one of the things I talked to Mr. Vetter and Mr. Bauer about was suspending in-person band for just this year and working with our band kids virtually, meaning kids that are in band on A days when they're in school, they don't have band, but when they're home on B days, being able to meet virtually with Mr. Bauer and Mr. Vetter, and the same thing with choir, with Miss McNally and Mr. Suddendorf, being able to do that virtually. They can actually, if kids are home, they can perform by themselves and still get some of that performance factor. Again, that is not 100% a done deal. I'm having conversations with our teachers tomorrow to explore some more creative ways of how we can engage our kids without endangering and spreading respiratory droplets. But that is the direction that we're headed. More details will come out after our conversations when we lock them all down. But I just wanted the board to know, and also the community to know the kind of the direction that we're looking at going.
Well, I'll tell you, when they did the online learning last year, and you could kind of get on and look, at least I did, and Miss McNally would do the Friday music, and I really loved it because she would have any group, any classroom. It was not it didn't matter what grade you were, and those kids would be on that Zoom, and they were precious singing the songs. I just thought it was outstanding. I thought that was great.
Yeah, she does a great job with those kids, for sure.
Now, who's her sub, by the way?
Mr. Drew, do you know her sub's name? I think Will Ellis. Any relation to Mrs. Ellis? No relation. No relation.
Make these names easy.
And so in the art class, Mrs. Lane's art class, we have plexiglass dividing each of the workstations on those big block tables. And kids will be actually bringing their own materials with them that they use in their classrooms. Mrs. Lane's going to communicate to their teachers what are the materials they need for that day, and they're going to bring those down with them. And the same thing, Mrs. Fowler, I talked to her, and any shared equipment, meaning if a class uses a basketball's first specials period and then the next class needs to use them the second specials period, she's actually going to have 10 minutes in between, the way we've organized our schedule, allowing our elective teachers to clean their areas before other kids come in. And again, that shouldn't be an issue, especially if we're talking 8 or 9 kids per class, that we should be able to do that, not a problem. We'll learn some things as we start school and get kids back in, but as we plan it out, we feel like it is very doable. So that's the elective courses and kind of what we're looking at there.
Is Mr. Ellis moving from music to art?
Currently
What?
we haven't each signed up to do music to start with.
Okay, so we don't, okay.
Yeah, currently he is
Babies
doing,
are coming.
knowing that later in the year, Mrs. Lane will be out as well.
Mhm.
Okay, one of the statements, confirm the installation of hand sanitizing stations at all appropriate areas, entrances, classrooms. Yes, I think Mr. Conover, he talked about it in building and grounds. I think 150 3 hand sanitizer stations have been installed at total at both buildings. They're in every classroom and they're at all of our entrances, and we actually have some standalone hand sanitizing stations, I know, at Amity. So we have those everywhere. The question was who's going to refill the sanitizer stations? How often should they be checked? They're going to be checked daily. Our custodial team will be the one refilling those. How often should the restrooms be checked? Obviously, they're checked continuously through the day, but our custodial team is going to be clean misting those twice a day. Again, we talked about misting versus actually wiping it down, our regular clean versus our deep clean. When we mist, kills the germs. When we deep clean, we actually wipe the germs off. A question was asked about how our sicknesses, spills, those types of things reported. The teacher calls down to the nurses in the office, notifying them there's 6 students coming down. If there's a fever, the nurse will notify the teacher so the classroom can be evacuated and misted. The nurse will also notify the custodians of the classrooms that need to be misted. Written protocols for cleaning, I think it's just a statement. We do have those. We have those for our junior, senior high, and Amity Elementary. Amity's have changed just a little bit. I think I shared them with Paul at one point. They've changed because we're not eating lunch in the classrooms anymore. We're eating lunch down in the cafeteria, which, I don't know if that helps or hurts our custodial staff. Dave's rolling his eyes back there. I think it might create some additional challenges, but again, nothing that we're not going to be able to handle. There's a statement here about disinfectant wipe stations in appropriate locations. Obviously, the disinfectant wipes, the Lysol wipes, if you've been to the store or tried to order them or buy them, I know our parents had asked some questions about that early on. They're nowhere to be found at this point. They're still in high demand and low supply. But we do have our cleaning agents and our paper towels in every classroom. And just to touch on that, I guess while we're speaking about that, because I know this was one of the questions, at the elementary school, our teachers are actually going to wipe down those desks. Again, we're not trying to wipe down 25 or 28 desks. We're wiping down 8 or 9 desks in between class. At the high school, teachers are going to spray, and our high school students, junior, senior high school students that transition to the classroom will grab a towel on their way in and wipe their area down, throw their towel away, wash their hands. But that was, I think, the plan that the teachers and administrators had developed at the junior, senior high. I've talked about the maximum capacity in the classrooms. Again, we're well under that in all of our classrooms. I'm just looking for some additional questions. Yes, are we going to notify our students, or our parents and our students, of which entrances will be used? Yes, we're going to publish that this week. Again, that's going to be sent out through our email release so that parents know where to pick up, drop off their kid, how they're going to get there. And I know areas were also shared in the Amity Minute this week. Is that true, Josh? Maps showing locations will also be sent out to give parents a visual. How will temperatures of student staffs be taken and outliers be reported? We kind of talked about that already a little bit. We're taking temperatures of our kids when they're coming in the building. Staff are going to be self-checking before they come to work, and then reporting, or not reporting to work, but reporting that they have some symptoms, being a fever. But again, we shouldn't have any issues bringing our kids in, especially with 4 different entrances and breaking our kids down. We're going to, I think, based on today's test simulation, we're going to be able to get them in pretty quickly. There was a statement, acquire door props for designated entrances and exits and other appropriate locations. We did order 100 door stops, and that'll be done, just to keep the doors open so people aren't, when they come into school, we're not constantly closing and opening the door and having people touching those. Our folks will be there monitoring the doors, obviously.
Okay.
I saw that look on your face.
I was
When we're
like,
taking
that's a lot of
temperatures,
door stops.
no, when we take a temperature, they don't have to open the door. They're going to go right in the
Perfect.
building. And then once school starts, when we're done admitting kids, just at all the 4 entrances, they have to come into the front office. Again, buzz in, come to the front office, check in. I think that actually was a question when a kid is tardy. They come into I know at Amity they're going to come in, sign in the front vestibule. They'll go into the office, secretary will scan their forehead, and then send them to class if they're clear. If they're not, then they will be sent to the to the health room, the symptom health room. We have 2 different health rooms, obviously, one for wellness, medication, non-COVID symptoms, Band-Aids, scrapes on the knee, and then we have another one that we send students who have potentially COVID symptoms to as well. Let's see. How will the ELC rooms be used and who will be responsible for cleaning between uses? We're saying that ELCs can be utilized by the teachers, and if needed, they will need to be sanitized by the teachers prior to leaving. Again, sometimes we use those for small groups. All of our groups this year are small groups, but who has the responsibility for the use and sanitizing of the auditorium, the Career Center rooms, weight rooms, locker rooms, Amity PDC? That's pretty much our custodial staff. Again, in high-touch areas, will be done twice a day. Dave, anything on Career Centers and weight room that you want to discuss? Sorry to put you on the spot.
All those areas already have pre-assigned custodians, and those custodians will take care of their own areas, and the responsibilities will be the same across the board, whether it's a classroom or whether it's the weight room.
Thank you. Question about classroom door positioning. The junior senior high school asked teachers to keep doors open for ventilation, but locked, so that if there is an emergency, they simply shut their door and our kids will be secure. Again, I think most of our families know, but I think it's been 3 years now, or 2 years, that we've had school security officers who are constantly monitoring our hallways as well. So they will be part of keeping our classes and our school building secure. Does the high school have filling stations for water bottles? Yes, Dave has actually installed new water fountains into the high school, and they're spread throughout the building. They're actually built into the drinking fountains. If you've been in the school buildings over the last few weeks, you'll see that our drinking fountains have plastic wrap around them so that they can't be used, the actual drinking fountain part, but they can put their water bottles under the water bottle part and use those, and you can see an example back there. Recess, separation, and monitoring. Right now, again, as I alluded to before, with having a remote option and 25% of our kids choosing remote this year is a little less than 25%. But then also going hybrid. You know, our grade level class sizes are going to be about, on each day, about between 30 and 35 kids. So right now the plans on recess are to bring them out by grade level. Again, in the cafeteria, they're going to be sitting by classes and they're going to have assigned seats, but when they go outside, we actually had some direction from the health director on this, that they're outside, they're running, they're playing, they're okay to play with each other by grade level in smaller cohorts such as our 35 kids in a grade level. If they are sitting next to each other or close proximity, we're going to ask them to wear their masks. If they're running around and playing, they can take their masks off as long as they're not, you know, staying within 6 feet of people. Obviously, I think that's a big ask to have a kid that's running around on recess wear their mask the entire time. The guidance given to us by the Ohio Department of Health has allowed for them to take those masks off if they're not within 6 feet of each other. Now again, they're going to be running around. Maybe they pass somebody. Maybe we're going to try to keep that from happening as much as we can. Playground equipment can be used. Again, that was told to us by the Hamilton County Public Health supervisor. He actually emailed me about that today. Just as long as that's part of our daily cleaning protocols, which, you know, daily we're going to need somebody to wipe that equipment down. But one of the other pieces that we're stressing to our kids is wash your hands, use hand sanitizer. So we're going to wash our hands and use hand sanitizer on the way out to recess. We're going to wash our hands, use hand sanitizer on the way back in from recess. So we're going to do our best to keep that all stomped down. Okay.
Can I
Yes.
interject on there? So I read where lunches are 20 minutes. So does that mean when they get to the cafeteria, it's the 20 minutes? So I was just thinking about the kids having to travel to go down to the cafeteria, if that was part of their 20-minute lunch or not.
I'm not sure if that's part of their 20-minute lunch. Josh, is that part of the 20-minute lunch, the actual travel down there?
So the goal would be to get them 20 minutes in the lunchroom.
Perfect.
I know that there was concern over, you know, that amount of time. And really, when we look at how much time they spent down there last year, it's pretty comparable. It might be 5 minutes less, but we have half as many kids.
Exactly.
And especially in our older grades, they eat pretty fast, and then it's a social time. And so it's going to be a little bit different because they don't have that social, it's going to be a different social time because you're going to be 6 feet apart from someone else. And so really going to look to eat and then get out to the playgrounds to have that recess. Our recess time has been extended. We're going to get that good mask break in there. And we feel very confident, myself with the teachers, having monitored lunch duty all last year, that they will get their food and be able to eat it.
And to
So-
be honest, we want to limit that social time inside. We'd
Right.
rather the social time be outside. And-
So, I'm just going to ask a question here. So who does recess duty?
So recess duty is going to be done by intervention specialists, myself, instructional aides, whoever is available to help get it done.
We will have, and he's already got plenty of people assigned, and so there are plenty of adults that will be out there. Our teachers are going to get their full 30-minute lunch.
Oh, I
So
forgot.
that's,
Yeah,
so that's
okay,
not a
forgot about
problem.
that.
I know that,
Okay. No.
sometimes that's a problem.
Yeah,
but
okay.
That's what
No,
our teachers think
I
about.
prefer them outside than inside, too.
If you want
Absolutely.
to come and help us do recess duty, we'll take it
I
any day.
probably will do that.
Okay.
Favorite part of the day.
Eliminate community supplies in classrooms. Again, that was part of our directives early on to eliminate the use, and you've heard how we're doing that in art class, and if there are times that you can't help but have community use, those are going to be sanitized afterwards. Kids are going to be washing their hands and sanitizing their hands before and after, but for the most part, we're trying to eliminate that as much as possible. If schools close, how do we transition to virtual learning, and what curriculum will we use? That's a great question, because I've heard comments from parents thinking that if we go virtual, then all of a sudden all of our kids will be on Accelerate or Apex, and that is not the case. If we have to go virtual, which we're hoping we don't ever have to do that. We don't even like talking about it. But if we have to go virtual, our teachers will be facilitating the learning in the virtual environment. We're still going to ask, obviously, I'm saying this, conditions pending, but we would still ask our teachers to report to work in their classrooms and be teaching from their classrooms, engaging our kids through Google Hangout and or Zoom, obviously using Schoology as that learning management platform. It won't, I've said this before, I'll say it again, it won't look like the spring. We'll be actively engaging our kids. So if we have to go virtual, and I know a lot of our professional development this week and last week was geared towards building our staff's technology knowledge around things like Screencastify, the learning management platform, Schoology, and those types of things. So we're trying to get ready for that in case it has to happen. Okay. If a teacher is out with COVID, who is responsible for the classwork and for work for students out with COVID? That's kind of a loaded question. There's a couple pieces to that. So if a teacher is out with COVID, we have to find a sub for that teacher, okay? And the substitute teacher is going to be responsible. If a teacher is out because they have to quarantine, okay? And remember, if you're within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more, you have to quarantine. If a teacher is out and they have to quarantine, what we've talked to our staff about is we'd like you to be able to engage your kids, even if it's virtually. We have to have a sub in the classroom, but we want you to engage our kids, teach your kids. They'll be working from home. They're going to be actively engaged. If they're sick, we're not going to ask them to do that, obviously. If they're COVID positive, we're not asking them to do that. But if they're not, they're going to be working. We still have to have a sub to be able to watch the students, but our teachers are going to be working from their home. And then if a student is out with COVID, it is our teacher's responsibility to get them their work loaded up onto Schoology, have the learning management system deliver the content. So whether it's worksheets, whatever it might be, but our teachers are responsible ultimately for that. Paul, anything from your documents there that you want me to elaborate on?
Well, one thing I'd like to know about is when we have students or teachers or whomever actually test positive for one reason or another, and we bring them down to the nurse's station, somebody comes to take them away. What kind of records is the health department expecting us to keep, and how long are we supposed to keep them?
Well, what the health department has asked is that we notify them of the student. We are actually assigned a contact tracer. They're still developing their protocols. They released a handbook, I think, that I forwarded to all of you. They haven't told us exactly what records. All they're talking about is contact tracing right now, and that's the most important piece. And that's why we have assigned seats for all of our kids, and we have to stick to that pretty closely, because just as you probably saw in your news feed today, a Lebanon student had tested positive for COVID, and I think they had to quarantine 19 students. Again, it's anybody within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more within the previous 48 hours.
48 hours?
Within the previous 48 hours. 15 minutes or more, but they look at the previous 48 hours. And so that guidance just came out probably a week ago. So again, some of these pieces of information are new. So as far as what exactly they want from us, they haven't told us that quite yet. All they told us is be prepared for the contact tracing. You're assigned. As a matter of fact, they sent us last week a document with who it is at the Hamilton County Health Department. That is our contact. So we have a contact. Our nurses have that. Our administrators have that. So I'm sure we'd follow their lead. We would call them and ask them what they need from us. Anything else there, Mr. Godwin?
Oh, I'm fine.
Okay. I'm going through, I know, Ms. Huster, you had quite a few questions, and we took note of those last week. I want to be able to answer, and some of those I've already answered. Champions we've talked about. Temperature checks we've already talked about. What happens if a student has a fever? I think we talked about that as well. But again, if a student has a fever, they'll be sent home, recommended to see their healthcare professional, whoever that might be, the healthcare professional. And Stacy, if I'm saying any of this wrong, let me know. I'll hand these documents out to you. She printed these for me to give to all of you. But if a student is out, and I'm just going to go through this process map, and this is also given to all of our teachers in their COVID-19 FFCRA employee handbook. There's a lot of information. So thanks to Melissa and Stacy for putting this together. But if a student is suspected positive, again, we will report the positive case to Hamilton County Public Health, and the student will be advised to see their healthcare professional. If the student is positive for COVID-19, or the Hamilton County Public Health determines that the student's symptoms are consistent with COVID-19 and it is a probable positive case, the student must isolate and self-quarantine for 10 days. The student may return to school after 10 days have passed from the positive test results, or 10 days have passed from the symptom onset. Respiratory symptoms have improved, and at least 24 hours have passed with no fever, without the use of fever-reducing medication. Okay? And then this other piece of it, if the student was on campus in the last 48 hours, the administration has to identify any other student or staff who were present in the same class on the last day the student who tested positive was present. Administration will send written notification of possible exposure to all staff and parent/guardian of students who were exposed. All students and staff who were exposed within 6 feet for 15 minutes or greater will be excluded from school for 14 days from the date of the last exposure. Those persons will need to monitor their symptoms at home and contact a primary care physician if they develop. If Hamilton County Public Health determines the student's symptoms are not consistent with COVID-19, that was the other piece of this, then the student needs to remain home until 72 hours have passed since the symptoms have subsided, and fever-free for 24 hours without the use of fever-reducing medication. So,
I have a question on that,
Yes.
because I think so if a student goes down and they have a fever,
mhm,
and you send them home,
mhm,
then that's a suspicion of COVID.
mhm.
They're supposed to contact their primary care?
Their healthcare provider, their doctor.
Okay, doctor. If they don't, then what happens?
If they don't, we have to handle it as if it is a positive COVID case. So that student will be required to quarantine for 10 days and then be fever-free and symptom-free for 24 hours. So if day 10 is symptom-free, fever-free, they can come back on day 11. Am I explaining that correctly, Dr. Orso? Yes, go ahead.
Just to add to that, if we send a student home
even though we're saying you need to contact your primary care physician, we will also contact Hamilton County Public Health Department. They will reach out to the family and determine if this is a probable case or not. And then it kind of goes one direction or the
Okay.
other on the flow chart. If they determine that it's probable, even if the family doesn't want to get tested, then we treat them, like Mr. Phillips said, as though they're positive. Otherwise, we go the other direction where they have to be symptom-free for 72 hours and fever-free for 24.
Wow.
There's a lot to this, and I'm sure we'll learn a lot as the year progresses. We've talked about how parents sign their kids in for today. We've talked about specials. We've talked about school supplies. We've talked about sixth grade band. We've talked about cafeteria time. We've talked about recess. You said 2-hour cleaning of doorknobs. Just added this one. No paper towels in restrooms. How do kids open the door? So door stops were purchased at Amity for restrooms, so they don't have to touch the doors. Sixth grade and first grade girls will not be propped, as now the bathroom is not designed to allow for the privacy of students. Hand sanitizer will be used when re-entering the classroom. Does that answer your question on that?
No, and I said that. I told him this was just an extra one. I said that we just always taught our kids wherever they go to a bathroom that when they wash their hands and after they dry them, they take a piece of paper towel to open the door just because, you're not getting any germs. And so I just asked that because I was in the restrooms at Amity and they are nice and clean and they do have the air thing. And I was just a curiosity question, not
Gotcha.
like something you had to do. I'm not
Gotcha.
saying that was just something I had to ask.
Okay, thank you. Library, I think we talked a little bit about that. At the junior, senior high school, they're going to work with Mrs. Coates basically to order their books ahead of time and pre-order books. Still working through a way for books to be checked out by request. Again, it's tougher at the elementary because they don't necessarily know what books they want, but we're working on having just, a limited selection that they could look at and then choose from. But we're working with Mrs. Euler on that. Number of feet apart, no 6 feet, but the arrows at Amity are at 3 feet. Just kind of curious on why that is. Really, that's just for that kids can be able to see that and just some consistency in the hallway. They weren't essentially social distancing markers. We do have social distancing markers at the general congregation areas, such as the front door, the office, down in the cafeteria. But it was more of an aesthetics thing. Wasn't the arrows aren't there for kids actually to stand on, although maybe they will.
That's their 3 feet, so they would be good to go, so.
Yes. Let's see. Areas at school for rival dismissal, we talked about that. Sibling pickups. I know we shared this in the Amity Minute. Younger students will be taken to the older students and we'll dismiss out of the west parking lot for riders and southwest doors for walkers. Josh, can you explain that just a little bit, expand on that one?
Yeah, so some of the thought process behind that is that we do have our aides in our kindergarten that will be available to help them travel. Really trying to be more efficient with last year. So just talk about last year. Last year we had our older students come down and get them and then go from there. We think it'll be more efficient and will maximize our academic time if we're taking our youngest students to a designated location where our older students will pick them up and take them out.
So you've got the kindergarten covered, so then does that happen with the first grade, second grade, every grade?
Our plan is to have our first grade ELC as that place where we're going to meet up with those students. Obviously, we're going to space them out in there,
Right.
those kindergarten and first grade students. And it's a pretty central place that students are going
Right.
to pass by to pick up their sibling and be ready on that
Perfect.
west parking lot, ready to go.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Okay, thank you. The question about school times, more about tardies and when will we notify parents, especially I think those first weeks as we're trying to get acclimated to this. Again, I know Mr. Hartley and Mr. Drew both said it's going to be the same process as last year, when tardies, and I know by Ohio law we have to contact home within 2 hours anyhow. With the number of students we have here, it's going to actually be much easier, much faster for us to be able to contact parents and let them know if their kid hasn't arrived to school yet. Anything you guys want to add to that, or does that pretty much cover it? Thumbs up.
Just tell us what the school time day is for each building and teacher times.
I'll let you guys elaborate on that.
the junior, senior high school, it's going to stay the same as it was last year. So,
You're not moving to,
no. So the school day technically begins at 8:10 and ends at 3 o'clock. And then the teachers have, I think it's 7:30 to 3:05, around that to get their hours in.
And when are you opening up the school building?
We're going to open it up at 7:55,
so your teachers come at what time?
7:30.
So what do they do from 7:30 to 8? Okay.
Professional development, and then we've been talking about the first couple of weeks. It's just going to be a lot of preparing, catching up. We know that there's a lot of new processes, so a lot of it's going to be figuring out how things have gone so far, what things they need to think of differently. So that would involve a lot of department meetings, a lot of grade level meetings, and then we are going to throw in one of the new programs that we have is personal professional development online for an edu badging is the name of the program. It's something that I think we had talked about earlier, but again, it's personal professional development during that time.
And 7:55, which is a little different than the past, they have to be in their classrooms because the doors open and our kids are going to report right to the classroom rather than down to the cafeteria as has been done in the past.
Right. Yep.
Mr. Jordan, school times?
Ready. So we did send them out in the Amity Minute this week, and we're going to open our doors at 7:45. That's when our teachers are in their classroom ready to accept those students. So we'll start our wellness check. 8 o'clock's our goal to get everyone in and get things going. End of the day is that kind of like a rolling finish, as we talked about last time, 3:05, looking to get those kindergartner and first graders on the east side of the building. And then kind of by 3:10, 3:15, our older grades will have come down and be on the west side or in Walker's ready to go. So pretty much lining up with last year.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I ask a question
Yes.
on that? So the first day of school, might probably be both of you maybe, kids that have not been on Schoology and don't know where the classroom is or who their teacher is, what are you gonna do?
So if we have someone show up on the first day and they don't know where they are, we're going to have tons of people in the hallway, just like we
I
always
mean,
do.
you'll be able to tell them what their teacher is and
We'll be
who
able to
they
get them
are.
that assistance.
I mean,
You know,
I'm
if it's-
hoping everybody appears to me everybody wants to know beforehand, but I'm just thinking, you might have kids from online who just kind of like show up and say, no, I'm not, I saw a picture today of a kid with a spread back saying, I'm not doing this virtual anymore, and I'm thinking, you haven't even started. So,
Yeah,
I was just curious that,
We'll have people to help get them to those rooms. And we understand that we haven't, our open house looks different this year in terms of it being virtual. And so, we'll get them to where they need to be.
And I will elaborate on that. I think we've talked about that a little bit, but I know Mr. Snyder has worked with our building principals to come up with almost a virtual tour of our buildings so that kindergarten students can see what it looks like to walk in those front doors and walk into the lobby and walk down the hallway. Same thing at the junior, senior high for our 7th graders and also new students at our junior high, junior, senior high. And I know he's going to release that this week. Jake, do you know when you're releasing that?
We don't have a specific date. As far as I know, the junior senior high school one is out already. It was shared on Schoology specifically because it's a flip grid, right? The Amity one we're finishing up tomorrow with the last filming we have to do, but I'm already about halfway through the editing of the video, so probably Thursday, Friday at the absolute latest.
So
yeah, it'll definitely be out by Friday. So.
Okay, good. And then also kind of our meet and greet is a little different. We've talked about that. Our teachers are, and I know they're doing that this week, doing a selfie, talking into the camera, introducing themselves, being able to see pictures of our teachers without their masks on. Our teachers are going to introduce themselves, show themselves around the class, show kids around the classroom virtually, and are going to send that home through Schoology for their kids as well to utilize on Schoology. So that'll be a little different than usual. And one of the other things, actually, you know what, it's going to be a surprise for our kids. I think you guys know about it. I talked about it in my convocation video, but I'll leave that as a surprise because that'll be a fun surprise for our kids.
Can I ask one question? I've not been on Schoology, so I don't know, and I just kind of, sometimes on the moms group, it's up there. When you gave out on Schoology at the high school, Shane, and you gave the teacher's name, did you give the room number?
Is there room number on Schoology?
Because somebody said, I know these are my kids' teachers,
Yeah.
but I don't know where they're located, and I was thinking,
I
well,
don't believe so, but what's that?
I can answer this question.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh,
So
good.
I was actually, this was brought up in my communications meeting tonight, and Corey Madden was on that conversation, and she mentioned that they have on Schoology a document that has teachers' names and the room number. So it doesn't say it next to the
that's
teacher's
fine,
name.
just so they know where
It's just a document that has the room numbers. We're gonna put one together for Amity as well, to do something similar. So we should have that done in the next day or two as well.
No, I was just curious, because parents were saying they have so-and-so, but they have no
Yeah.
idea where that room is. so-
Well, and that's okay, because the students pretty much know.
These
So,
are seventh graders.
yeah, well, that's okay, because the seventh graders are gonna come in a certain door, and it's all down one hallway, so.
That's fine.
And
yeah.
the other thing that we're going to do, in addition to answering your first question, is we're going to have posted in the hallway names and homeroom numbers right next to it as well. So we'll have
Great.
everyone out there, and it'll be posted up.
And
That'll be
Shane, didn't I also see that you're giving out class schedules that first day?
Yes.
Everyone will get a paper copy?
Yes, so again, yeah, everyone can see their schedule on Schoology
Perfect.
ahead of time, but they will get their full class schedule, paper copy, in their first bell on the first day.
And that'll have teacher name and location, so,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
And I think I answered the last question that was on the list we talked about already, Mrs. Huster, that I made note of from last week about the mask order and teaching ESL and reading. We talked about that. Anything from that list that I was missing?
No, but I have a 5-year-old grandson. I've got to tell you this. And the other day he said, Nana, if I sneeze and the snot gets in my mask, do I have to leave that on all day? So tell the teachers that, they can change out masks. That was kind of Rory's big to do.
Yeah, and
Right.
he's probably not the only one.
Yeah, I know. I mean, kids are thinking that. I
Yeah.
mean, so, so do kids bring a couple masks, or we just keep these little things here? and
We
say-
have mask replacements for our kids and our staff. Obviously, we're asking our kids to bring their own mask, but we will have plenty of masks in the building as replacements. Mrs. Kelms, Mr. Downey, Mrs. Bossy, I made note of Mrs. Huster and Mr. Godwin's questions from last time, and I wanted to answer those. What other questions do you guys have?
I'm just curious, and I don't know if you have a definitive answer, because I know the high school scheduling is probably still happening. But what are like some of their bigger class, are they all in the 10 people range? And I don't know that you have that number. I'm just.
Well, here's what I will tell you, and kind of something that I mentioned before. I don't have the exact class numbers. It's going to be the same, but just to give you an example, as I go through this, in 7th grade, we have 76 total students face-to-face. So that's an average of 9.5 students per class, okay? 8th grade is our biggest class, and 8th grade is at 87. And I did the math on this earlier, but just to make sure I like to be precise. I don't want to round like Ms. Huster likes to do.
I want the whole child there.
It was about 10.8 kids per class. And then in 9th grade, it was about 8 kids per class. 10th grade, we have 71 students, and so that's about 8.8 kids per class. 68 students in 11th grade, which again is about 6.9 kids per class. And then because of the Oaks, we have 58 seniors that are actually in our building because of the Oaks and because of remote learning. So
What about AP classes, like
about what classes?
AP classes? Because I just knew we had, people really did a good job of signing up for those. I didn't know if they were able to split the English AP up or not.
Yeah, again, I don't have the exact
Right.
class size numbers, but I know they were working hard on making sure that those classes were fairly equitably distributed. I don't know, Mr. Hartley, you want to talk to that?
Without any exact numbers, I can tell you that our teachers finally yesterday, since the signups closed Friday evening, our teachers finally yesterday were able to get that class list of everyone who was going virtual. So our teachers were going through their class lists, and they were seeing who can we, eliminate, and who's A days and who's B days. And so they've been communicating with us if any class sizes they thought might be too big, but we were using the chart that Mr. Phillips had referred to earlier for class sizes and square footage. It's actually nice. We had some teachers finding out the square footage of their classrooms, some real-world math being used there.
So I think we'll be easily under capacity in all of our class for our square footage.
Now, on the flip side, were there any classes that we had to not have because we had too few kids? I know that's a strange question, but, you know, I know sometimes you have
Yeah,
some of those electives and you have fewer kids sign up that,
Yeah, when we have all kids in the classroom, typically if we have fewer than 5 kids, especially, you know, as we get up to the upper grade levels, 3, 4 kids, when I was director of curriculum, we said we can't hold this class because we have such higher numbers in other classes. There was no classes that we had to cross off the list that I'm aware of. And we actually, some classes, for example, are, you know, without getting into too many details, because we're going hybrid, we have teachers that weren't going to be able to be here full-time because of underlying health conditions and family reasons that are actually back. So I just want to throw that out there, that going hybrid helped us from a staffing perspective as too, in being able to offer every class that we have.
Can I ask one more question? I just want to make sure, because I saw this today. All kids at the high school and Amity have an official teacher, homeroom teacher? Like somebody said, I don't know, somebody was talking, I don't know whether it was a kindergarten or first grade, they said that they were told that the class list wasn't up because they hadn't finished it. Are all class lists finished, Josh?
So I can answer that. All classes, there were, and I talked about that early on. So the homeroom teachers, it was a confusion because of the back end with Dazzle. She's cleaning that up. Every kid has a homeroom teacher. There were a handful of kids that their class lists were not correct because they were new students to the class. They were new students to our school district. And it pretty much, if I'm correct, Josh and Michelle, it only happened to our brand new enrolled students. And their class schedule was a little messed up. But again, that's going to be fixed with our back end Dazzle cleanup. But it was pretty much.
So everybody's in a room?
Everybody has a homeroom. Everybody's in a class.
Great.
Once we get the Macaulay Longwell and Kevin Moulton issues fixed for them with them changing grade levels. And once we get the homeroom people fixed, the homeroom names fixed, we'll pretty much be set,
Yeah.
I think. There might be a couple errors that
No, I
pop
just was
up. But
curious to make sure everybody, the teachers all have a list and it's official now.
Yep, definitely some minor growing pains
Oh,
with
that's-
the new system, but again, all of our kids will come on Monday, and
I
we'll take
can't
them to the
wait.
right classes, and we'll be just fine.
Great.
Jay, just one comment, a question for myself. And first of all, your leadership team and yourself have done a phenomenal job really looking at and addressing any and every possible situation. Just phenomenal.
Thank you.
The question I had is with the signups closed on Friday, and I seen your report of the numbers, that some 75% in school, 25% if you go at home. Quite a few kids that had not signed up. It was a pretty large number, was it not?
There's about 100 kids, 100 families that still had not filled out final forms. And Jake, I just want to make sure, can you hear Dan?
Not really, so if you could grab
Oh,
the
God
microphone.
knows, I could hear you. I thought it was.
I'm sorry.
Talk back the question.
Sure.
Yeah,
So,
the question, Jay, I had was just with the sign-up closed last Friday and we extended it on, with, you said about 100 kids
mhm,
that did not reply through Schoology.
yep.
How do
We-
we address that? You know, I know you're placing them, but how do they know?
We did place them, as a matter of fact, I think we made contact with most of those families, and they if they did not choose online, they had planned on coming back face-to-face anyhow. The families that wanted to be online, they got on and chose it.
So we
But
feel
yeah,
comfortable.
we did connect with those families, and they know.
I got just one question.
Okay.
You probably touched on it, and maybe I misunderstood, but, so if one kid goes home with COVID and there's 3 other students in the family, do you search out those 3 other students and send them home also
Yes.
until they get tested immediately?
Yes, the guidance from the health department is that they are considered a close contact and they should quarantine.
Okay. So even if they don't have COVID?
Even
they're
if they
still
don't have COVID,
quarantined?
if they're a family member of someone who is positive, they're considered a close contact and will follow those rules, which I believe 14-day quarantine and then symptom-free for 24 hours? 10-day quarantine.
It's 10 days for the student who either tests positive or has symptoms, and 14 days from the last exposure for the close contacts.
Yep.
Okay, and then, so, say the other 3 kids don't get it at all,
Mhm.
but then they come back, say 2 weeks later, one of them gets it.
Mhm.
Now everybody's going back?
Have to follow the same procedures. The family members are always considered close contacts.
Even the one that had COVID before?
Even the one, now that would be up to the health department, because right now, there's research that, and this piece changes all the time. They're saying that originally it was thought if you got COVID, you wouldn't ever get it again. You don't know that because we've never had this strand of the coronavirus. Now they're saying it's about a 3-month immunity. So that would be up to the health department. My best guess is, Karen, is that they would all have to quarantine again.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's hope we don't ever face that situation. Any other questions or comments or thoughts? Thank you for your comments, Mr. Downey. Appreciate it.
Remote learners, there's going to be a webinar or something happening this week, is that correct? I know there's,
Dr. Warsaw, I'll let you address that for the remote learners.
just helping those that are watching, just,
There's going to be a Zoom call for each of the 3 different platforms with their teachers, so they'll get an orientation. They all have their login credentials at this point, and so they'll be able to log in live with the teacher, which we thought would eliminate a lot of back and forth emails and phone calls with the teachers, just to be able to get the students on. So I don't remember exactly which is which, but they're on Friday, one is at 10, one is at 11, and one is at 1 o'clock.
And those will be recorded for the families that aren't able to get on at that time, so they'll be able to watch it on their own time.
fantastic, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Not at this time.
If not, I think that's the end of my report tonight.
Good job.
All right, you want to get a drink of water before you go on to your recommendations?
Yeah, absolutely.
So hopefully for those watching, we've answered a lot of questions or cleared up some things, but know that we understand more's coming, but we're doing the best we can.
Correct.
And
And
the
again,
teachers are confident. They are so excited. I really feel confident.
and I think most of our students are excited too. They haven't been here since March. And you know, for how much, during the grind of the year, students say, I hate school, I don't want to go to school. I think 100% of them are excited to come back, and we're excited to have them. Okay, so moving on to superintendent recommendations. Let me get there. Pause.
Another pile.
It's easier to get a new agenda than go through my pile of papers. Okay, my first recommendation is to approve the Neola policies 2266, 1662, 3362, 4362, and 5517.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? All those in favor of approving the Neola policy as listed, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. My next recommendation is to approve the resolution for complimentary passes for the 2020-2021 school year.
So moved.
You want to explain that one,
I sure
please?
do. So we are approving this, and I think most school districts have approved these complimentary passes, but as I talked about earlier, they may not be able to be used based on the guidance from the governor and the Ohio Department of Health in regards to spectators at events. We wanted to approve it in case those guidelines open up later this year and our Golden Cat card holders can come to our events. But right now, that's not going to be a possibility. So we want to approve it, we want to get it on the books, but we will let those folks know when they can use them and when they can pick up their cards.
Thank you. So we're approving this, assuming approval, but please do not come to get a card until we reach out to you.
Correct.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the resolution for complimentary passes, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. My next recommendation is to approve the resolution to appoint Chris Huster as delegate and Paul Godwin as alternate for the 2020 OSBA Capital Conference.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion?
That's very virtual.
It's a virtual conference this year, yes.
All those in favor of approving the resolution to appoint Chris Huster as delegate and Paul Godwin as alternate for the 2020 OSBA Capital Conference, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. My next recommendation is to approve the resolution authorizing proof of claim filed by law firms on behalf of the district in the Purdue Pharma bankruptcy.
So moved.
And I'm sure you want to hear an explanation
please
of that.
explain?
Second, and I would like to know what it is.
Yes, so we received information via this law firm about the Purdue Pharma bankruptcy, and essentially it had to do with opioids and the destruction of communities in regards to opioids. There was a class action lawsuit that was filed. We were contacted by the law firm asking if, as a school district, if we wanted to be part of that lawsuit. So obviously I contacted our legal counsel. They said, essentially, you want to do it because the only thing that can happen is that nothing happens. But they said on the flip end, the school district could get some settlement out of the lawsuit. It won't cost us anything. Obviously our attorneys will probably get a piece of the settlement that comes out of the class action lawsuit. But they said it wouldn't hurt, so we put our name in the hat. I told the law firm that we wanted in, and our attorneys suggested that. So at their suggestion, that's what I did, and we'll see what happens. But I don't know if anything will come out of it.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor of approving the resolution authorizing filing of bankruptcy proof of claim, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. My next recommendation is to approve the employment of Robert Jones, Marseille Elsie, and Philip Hogan.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion?
For what?
So Robert is our Career Academy's advanced manufacturing teacher, and Marseille is our sports medicine teacher.
Okay.
And then Philip Hogan will be a substitute bus driver. So that was at the recommendation of Joanne.
Any other questions? All those in favor of approving the employment of the three that Jay just named, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. My next recommendation is to approve all the following game workers for employment for the 2020-2021 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion?
Just as an FYI, if games are not played, they obviously don't get paid. So, it's up to a certain amount, and these are the exact same people we had approved last year as game workers.
All those in favor of approving the game workers as listed, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. My next recommendation is to approve the supplemental contract of Shannon Davidson for the 2020-2021 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? All those in favor of approving Shannon Davison as our student council junior high supplemental for the 2020-2021 school year, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. And my last recommendation is to approve rescinding the supplemental contracts for the 2020-2021 school year of Ian Kootenai and Chris Malaki.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? All those in favor of rescinding the supplemental contracts for soccer boys assistant coach and soccer girls reserve coach, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
And that is the end of my recommendations.
Thank you. Time now for superintendent committees. think some of them met this evening.
Yes, so Mr. Godwin and Mr. Downey, Building and Grounds.
Yeah, Jay, we met tonight,
Microphone, Mr. Downey.
sorry, thank you. We met this evening with Dave Conover and kind of went through, the first time we had met since, I think he said February. So there was a lot to cover. Kind of just went over, you know, some of the activities that took place during the summer, really getting school ready. We talked about things like installing the plexiglass, you know, 150 hand sanitizer stations between Amity and the high school. We talked a lot about safety at both schools, what's being done, how they're going about it, and it looked like things were really ready to go. I did mention a restroom at the high school had been remodeled to be more, to be handicap accessible. Greg Huster talked about the sports complex, some good things going on there. We're ready to go. Talked a little bit about the visitor stands. It still needs some work to be determined on that. But overall, a good meeting this evening. Paul, do you got any addition to that?
The only thing I'd like to add to that is that we now have the security film installed at Amity. So that's another item checked off our list.
Unfortunately.
Is that just at the front entrance? Is that where that's located?
Dave, is it just a front entrance or all low hanging glass?
Yeah, it was just the front entrance, the front 3 entrance doors, the vestibule doors, the door into the office, and the door on the other side of the office into the school.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dave.
Can I say something? Because I know that Mr. Godwin did a walkthrough with somebody the other day to look at things that were.
Mr. Saul, myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
How was that, Mr. Godwin?
Went well. We found a number of things that needed to be taken care of, and Mr. Stahl is already moving on those, so hopefully that will be resolved soon.
A lot of things with just kind of the building project itself, some windows we got to look at, some gutters, those types of things. But overall, cleanliness of the building looked really good. Mr. Conover, again, thank you for your work on that, and thank you to your guys. And there's always work to do.
Was that just Amity walkthrough, or?
We just went through Amity at this
Okay.
time, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Mrs. Kellum's communications.
You and Chris hit about on everything, so.
Okay.
There's really not much to say. Just a reminder that Thursday, we're going to be passing out the supply kits from the Lighthouse Community Church, which has got the book bags for the kids. And let's see, if your child doesn't have a homeroom teacher yet, don't panic. It will be done. They will have them, so don't worry about that. And the app will be up, and Jake will put out some feedback, I want to say,
A release.
release
Yep.
there. So, anything else? I think, because I think Jay hit on everything that we talked about.
Oh, the calendar.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Jay. Okay, Jake will.
So we had a lot of conversation back and forth about of what the flip, this is the physical flip calendar, of what it was going to look like, because we don't really know when any of our events are. So we went back and forth about not doing it, about doing it differently. And what we came up with was we're still going to do the calendar because we think people like having that calendar, like the pictures. Most people don't get flip calendars anymore, so having something like that. So we are going to do it. The only difference is we're not including any events on that calendar. So it'll still include holidays. It'll still include breaks. It'll still include end of quarters and things like that. So those things that we expect not to change and be firm throughout the year, we left on the calendar. Everything else was removed. And the idea being that we don't have to send out that something is canceled every single time that it doesn't happen. So those were, we got we had put a hold on those to figure out what we were going to do with it, what our schedule was going to look like. I got the final proof of it today. I anticipate it won't take very long to get them printed. Probably won't have them by the start of school, but we will have them soon, probably within the month to pass out to all of our students. So.
Jake, just real quick, with the new website, is there anything that there needs to be any kind of training on for parents? Or is it user-friendly?
Yeah, I wouldn't think that there needs to be anything, just because there's not anything anything that they're logging into or anything like that from the website perspective. The phone call system has all been updated, and the email system is the same as we've always used, except for it has been updated, obviously. If your kid has moved into the junior, senior high school from Amity or graduated, you've theoretically been removed from those lists. But I don't think there's any major training. If people have questions about the website, feel free, obviously, to contact me, and we can talk through any issues. I mentioned to my communications committee today that there are still a couple of issues because the website doesn't start clean. It migrates over from the old, but we were able to get through and find most of those broken links or pages that weren't up to date and things like that and get them all adjusted. We're still finding things here and there and still making adjustments, but for the most part, it should be ready to go.
Perfect, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else see those gigantic birds?
Yes, I was very distracted.
There was like
It's
20
all- Is that what it was?
geese that just
Oh.
dropped down behind you.
I couldn't tell what they were.
Notice we were all looking at you there.
Okay. Curriculum instruction, I know you didn't meet this evening, but do you have anything to report? We've talked a lot about curriculum instruction, but anything from
I
either of you?
have nothing.
Okay. Finance, I know you met this evening, at least the sub-finance committee met this evening. Mr. Downey, or Mrs.
Yeah,
Bossy.
Peggy and I met with Melissa this evening. Probably been a while since we had gotten together, since March, to talk about just general finances of the school district. And really, again, it's more of an education for the board members to kind of understand the numbers. We went through quite a bit this evening. I think we covered a lot of ground in an hour's time. But really, the agenda included just some of the investments and the banking updates that we're involved with currently. We talked about a banking RFP that Melissa's putting together to look at potential a new bank, if you will, to handle our day-to-day transactions, trying to reduce fees and maybe increase some income on some of that money. So that's going to be happening in the next month or so. We kind of reviewed cash flow. We went through the state budget reduction and the CARES Act and how they really have offset each other. So I think overall we've done very well with the reduced income and getting the CARES money. We talked about the current simplified financial statement with June, and then we looked at the monthly report for July under kind of the new form, the new software program that I think as we tweak this thing, it's going to be really great for everybody on the board to understand the month-to-month finances. So that's kind of the things we've covered. Peggy, I don't know if you have anything else, but a great meeting tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Downey. Great Oaks Vocational Report, obviously with our board meetings being closed to the public, Mr. Smith is not here. However, he did give me a couple documents to just briefly touch on. One, the Great Oaks students, they did start this week. They started on a blended schedule. They're hybrid like us. They're A-day and B-days. And they do have a Restart Your Future 2020 kind of booklet that they posted online. If you're interested in more details about kind of what the Oaks students' days look like, their health and safety protocols, I can also pass that around if you guys want to take a look at it. But Steve just wanted to make sure that we knew that they started and that they are on a hybrid schedule like us as well. And even more, I wouldn't say more important, but just as important at the Oaks, they have a lot of equipment that has to be reused every day. And so, obviously their health and cleaning protocols are very strict at this time to be able to get those things wiped down and allow all the kids to be able to use that equipment. So. OSBA, pretty quiet right now. I don't know, Mr. Godwin or Ms. Huster, if you have anything for OSBA.
I don't know.
Okay. And then policy, I'll touch it. We did approve, we haven't done our fall policy yet, but with COVID and some other pieces, we've had some emergency policy come through. We did have a July policy, just to give a little bit of an explanation of the policy that we passed this evening. It is about Title IX and discrimination, and it is new law that went into effect August 14th. So we are August the 18th just approving it. However, if there was a case that would have come up after August 14th, we would have had to abide by that new law. This was just released to us at the end of July, so we had to get pretty quickly on top of this thing. But there's about a 20-page policy. Feel free to look it up on our website. All of our policies are listed on our website if you want to look at it. But again, it's about Title IX and discrimination. There is a lot to it. I think our administrative team just went through a 2-hour training this morning, webinar on Title IX and discrimination. And the other policies that we approved tonight were just changing names of coordinators. In the past, Dave Bergen was our coordinator for some of our Title IX pieces, and it's Stacy Orso and Patty Haddon now, so we had to change it to Stacy's name. But that's really it on the policy side. We do have, our fall policy has been released, and we have time in, I believe, September that we're meeting with our Neola representative, and then I'll get with the both of you after that to go through all of our new policies and revised policies. That should be the end of the committees.
Thank you very much. On to board discussion. Is there anything that anyone would like to discuss?
Well, I'd like to sprinkle across the table.
The microphone?
Oops. I'm going to stand for this one because I'm going to sprinkle across the table a big thank you to Debbie Field, because it's not words to say how many thousands of students' lives has impacted, and we will truly miss you. And I can't even imagine walking down the kindergarten hall and not seeing that big face. So thank you, Debbie Field.
And I agree. And she talked, I told you before, she sent an email, and she just mentioned how much the Amity staff and students meant to her, and that the Amity staff was really her family over the last 29 years and have been through some very difficult times in her life. And, obviously she had mixed emotions, but kind of with the climate that we're in with COVID, it made her decision a little bit easier. But you're right, we will miss her, and she has made a tremendous impact on a lot of kids and a lot of adults. I don't have anything else. I think I've done a lot of discussing tonight, so I will.
Just saying. All right, then we do have need for executive session to discuss the employment of a public employee or official.
Second.
All those in favor of moving to executive session at this time, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And just to let those watching know, we are not taking any action. We are just going in to discuss, and then we will be back just to adjourn. So carry on with your evening. Enjoy your evening, and have a good rest of your week.
Eat some dinner for us.
Thank you all.
Thank you.